freedom,
family,
world unity.
All these things and more will be discussed on this podcast.
Real stories, real people, real debates. On this podcast, we like to express our freedoms and talk about anything and everything goes.
Like freedom, family is important to us, and anybody that is listening, watching, or coming on the show as a guest star are all considered part of the greatest family to ever bless the solar system, the human race. No matter who you are, where you come from, you will always have a voice here on this podcast.
We like to flex our First Amendment, where all speeches and opinions are accepted for the right of freedom of speech. We have a saying we like to live by. Live life with eyes wide open. Being open-minded leads to true understanding of the world as it really is. Please, come, join us, and enjoy this experience as we embark on this journey of truth as we dismantle the subjective truth. I'm your host, Nick.
And I'm your co-host, Victoria.
And you're experiencing high consciousness.
Disclaimer. Any and all information on topics presented to the best of all who is present in each episode's knowledge. The goal of this podcast is to bring people together and set the example we all wish to see in our everyday lives. Whether it's home life, education, politics, history, business, etc. Any and all subjects can and will be talked and peacefully debated about on this podcast. On debate episodes, there will be a set rules of debate that hosts and guests alike must follow. We ask that you, the audience, like we ask of our guests, in the comments to please try to keep the language as clean as possible. We are a podcast for entertainment as well as educational purposes. Here we are all equal no matter what race, age, or gender. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
Welcome back, y'all,
To another episode of
High Consciousness. I'm your host, Nick.
And I'm your co-host, Victoria.
And we are
High
High Consciousness.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. Just another episode where it's solo dolo, your host today. Our editor is not feeling up to sitting on a pod today, so he'll be sitting out. But anyway, getting on to today, a little recap on what we talked about last week. Not last week, but 2 weeks ago, because we had gone on a little week hiatus. And well, I guess before I give you a little recap of last week that we did an episode, our hosts here, we have a big announcement. We are getting married! So we took the week, last week to, go on a little hiatus and start, doing a good part of the planning. We're getting married in April next year, and we are very, very, very excited. So if there are any other times where we go on another little hiatus, it is just for wedding plans, and we apologize in advance. But anyway, getting into the recap of our last Monday episode of our Constitution and other documents. One of the documents that we went over last time was the Treaty of Paris, which was basically a document that was an agreement of friendship, prosperity, and independence between the new United States, claiming their independence from the King of Great Britain and of France and all those other places that had a lot of influence over the colonies at the time before our forefathers declared independence. And what I found to be the most interesting about the very beginning processes of this document is that even though the United States, our forefathers, and the King of Britain, the leaders may not have saw eye to eye during the Revolutionary War, but by the end of it, it seems our forefathers wanted to still be friends with the British people.
Compromise.
And they gave a lot of compromise. Like, they claimed, like, okay, from here to here and here to here is where our colonies are, and any
our
other
states.
lands, or this is where our states are, and any other lands, we can mutually share, and whoever lays claim to that land, whether it's going to be us or the British, then once that land is claimed, then either us or the British are not allowed to cross over. Like, for example, if you had British fishermen that were trying to fish off of the coast of Maine and not in that neutral area, that they had described in, the regional parts, then we, as the United States, had the right to, take that person and imprison them because they broke the contract of the Treaty of Paris. We are not supposed to fish on British lands and isles, and they cannot fish on the United States isles and shores, but what they could do was that there was a neutral ground that nobody owned, then the two could equally sit there and fish together until one or the other claimed the land. So, yeah, basically, the Treaty of Paris was just, like, an agreement of, let's end this war, let's stop the bloodshed, we can be friends, and we can share the neutral parts of the land, but y'all are not going to come over here and, try to take our land away from us after we just gained independence from y'all. So,
Undermined us, basically.
And undermine us, in a way, yeah. And what I also found to be interesting was that our forefathers gave the British, loyalists the ability to either, sign some kind of contract to, like, stay on the United States land and agree to become a United States colonist if they wanted to, or they could, they had a year to pack up their bags, settle their affairs, and go back over to England or Great Britain, wherever they came from.
Mm-hmm.
So you could stay or go. And you had a year to 6 months, 6 months to like a year to figure it out. And if there was anybody that was like owed or due land, then the king would rightfully give that person that land, and our forefathers would rightfully give the person that, over here on our side, that land that they rightfully deserved with the new independence that was created.
Yep. And with that, we're going to go into the next document that our founding fathers wrote, which is basically the foundations of the Constitution. Because you got to remember, we had the Articles of Confederacy,
which was our first draft, pretty much, of the Constitution, or where we laid out our first ideas for the Constitution.
And for the Virginia plan, that's what document we're going to be reading about. They call them resolves, because I guess there was problems in the Articles of Confederacy that had a lot of problems, so these were the resolves to solve those problems. So, without further ado...
these were the solutions to
the
those
pressures
issues brought upon the...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much. So, any further ado...
Our host, Nicholas, will be reading this one for you today.
Yes. Without further ado, the Virginia Plan, 1787. In the Virginia Plan, writer James Madison laid the foundation for our current government system by proposing that the United States adapt three branches of government: the legislative, the judicial, and executive. And it starts off with, state of the resolutions submitted to the consideration of the House by the Honorable Mr. Randolph, as altered, amended, and agreed to in a committee of the whole House. Resolve number 1. That it is the opinion of this committee that a national government ought to be established consisting of a supreme legislative, judiciary, and executive. Resolved in number 2, that the national legislature ought to consist of two branches. That the national legislature ought to consist of two branches, which would be the House and the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
And then, resolve number 3, that the members of the first branch of the national legislature ought to be elected by the people of the several states for the term of 3 years to receive fixed stipends by which they might be constipated. That may be compensated for the devotion of their time to public service, to be paid out of the national treasury, to be ineligible to any office established by a particular state or under the authority of the United States. Then it says, except those particularly belonging to the functions of the first branch, during the term of service and under the national government for the space of 1 year after its expiration. Resolve number 4, that the members of the second branch of the national legislature ought to be chosen by the individual legislators to be of the age of 30 years at least, to hold their offices for a term significant to ensure their independency, namely 7 years.
Sufficient. Not significant.
Sufficient.
Serve offices for a term sufficient in assuring.
Thank you, Grandma Nazi.
What? I was just reading along with you.
You were. But in a very sufficient way.
Hey!
Independently for 7 years, to receive fixed stipends by which they might be compensated for the devotion of their time to public service, to be paid out of the national treasury, to be ineligible to any office established by a particular state or under the authority of the United States. Basically saying the same thing as the last resolved. Number 5, resolve that each branch ought to possess the right of originating acts. Resolve that each branch ought to possess the right of originating acts.
So, I guess originating acts. I guess it's like things that we originally came up with, or is it like going back to the origin of the Articles of Confederacy? That's my question.
Probably to the Articles of Confederacy.
Well, let's take a little trip back a few years and look at that 5th thing. So that's Article 4. Article 5, for more convenient management of the general interests of the United States, delegates shall be annually appointed in such manner as the legislature of each state shall direct, to meet in Congress on the first Monday in November in every year, with a power reserved to each state to recall its delegates, or any of them, or any time of the year, and to send others in their stead for the remainder of their year. Okay. So then we go back to resolve of that. Each branch ought to possess right of originating acts. Well, even with looking at that, I'm even more confused. Okay, so let's take a little dip to the Matrix and ask the internet and see if they know.
So what I'm thinking is that they have each branch has the right to have an original act, or they can make their own acts.
Okay. Oops. What does the originating acts
me? Bless you.
Excuse me. And resolve 5 of the
Virginia Plan.
Mean.
Ask me anything. We just did.
Loading.
Freezing.
Because the computer is being slow.
There it is.
Okay, so AI says the originating acts refers to the authority of each branch of the proposed national legislature, or initiate a purpose new to legislation. This means both houses of the legislature would have the power to draft and introduce new laws.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, it does relate to the second part. It's just I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together. Okay, so yeah. Originating acts meaning that whatever new laws and things that they come up with, they have the right to present them to the House, and the House has the right to vote on it and
eject it or accept.
The yeas and the nays.
So now resolve number 6, that the national legislator ought to be empowered to enjoy the legislative rights vested in Congress by the Confederation, and moreover to legislate in all cases to which the separate states are incompetent, or in which the harmony of the United States may be interrupted by the exercise of individual legislation, to negative all laws passed by the several states contravening in the opinion of the national legislator the Articles of Union, or any treaty subsisting under the authority of the Union.
See, that I always miss.
To negative all
Yeah,
laws.
that's what stumbled me up because I want to say navigate navigate.
I think that's supposed to be navigate, but in here they put it as negative, unless we're wrong. So let's look at Resolve 6 real quick and see what, internet's got to say about it. About the
negative
of all
laws passed by the several states.
Okay. It looks like there might be confusion or typo.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I posed that very right.
No.
Okay. What does
to negative all laws passed mean?
To negative all laws passed.
I really think this is a typo, and it meant to say navigate.
Mean. In English.
English.
Okay. What were they thinking? Okay. Refers to the power or veto to reject laws that have been enacted. Okay.
So basically, another way of saying no.
So, yeah, to veto all laws passed that, the Congress cannot agree on. That's what it means to negative all laws passed by the several states contravening. Okay.
And then I even have it right there used by James Madison.
What did they mean? And it was, if you were them referencing this document, be ultimately like a treasonous act against the country.
That's
the
the
king,
Declaration of
like
Independence. That's the Declaration of Independence.
Oh.
But no, it says it right here. James proposed a federal negative, which would give the
Congress the authority to veto. Yeah.
Yeah. So
seeing
negative.
This is again where the people of that time, like, they wrote things down in like a funny way that us, the people of today, just like, we have to go back and like look at historical references and stuff like that to even
get an idea,
to be able to understand.
These are context clues.
Yeah, context clues, which they try and teach you very, very hardcore in middle school a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 5th grade and all of middle school. They like hammer context clues on you.
So, with that, it just means veto, so cancel or saying no.
Mm-hmm.
And then, resolve number 7, that the right of suffrage in the first branch of the national suffrage, that, okay, I'm going to reread that. Number 7, Number 7, resolve that the right of suffrage in the first branch of the
You said salvage again.
Suffrage. Did I say salvage? I'm going to say suffrage.
It's suffrage.
Suffrage?
Suffrage. Yeah, suffrage to suffer. The right of suffrage in the first branch in the national legislature ought not to be according to the rule established in the Articles.
So
suffrage, not salvage. Suffrage.
I'm an English guy. I love it. Continuing on. I'm going to reread the whole entire thing now. Number 7, resolve that the right of suffrage in the first branch of the national legislators ought not to be according to the rules established in the Articles of Confederation, but according to some equitable ratio of representation, namely in proportion to the whole number of white and other free citizens and inhabitants of every age, sex, and condition, including those bound to servitude for a term of years, and 3/5 of all other persons not comprehended in the foregoing descriptions, except Native Americans not paying taxes in each state. So this is where the whole 3/5 idea came from the Virginia plan.
Well,
it literally says it right here.
What's actually kind of interesting right here, the Virginia plan, like, maybe I'm not, like, getting this right, but maybe I am, but what it says right here, there should be an equitable ratio of representation in Congress, in proportion to the whole number of white and other free citizens, inhabitants of every age, sex, even the condition of those and bound of servitude for a term of years.
And
3/5 of all other persons that are not comprehended in the foregoing description, except for the natives who are not paying taxes. So even the slaves and stuff
have
are represented within our Constitution here. And that is both the white indentured servants and the black indentured servants and the black slaves. It includes everybody has the right of representation in the congressional legislature.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually very admirable by our forefathers there.
By Mr. James Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Resolve number 8. Resolved that the right of suffrage in the second branch of the national legislature ought to be according to the rules established for the first. Basically saying that the second branch goes by the same rules as the first branch.
Mm-hmm.
Resolve number 9. That a national executive be instituted to consist of a single person, to be chosen by the national legislature for the term of 7 years, with power to carry into execution the national laws, to appoint to offices in case not otherwise provided for, to be ineligible a second time, and to be removable on impeachment and conviction of malpractice or neglect of duty, to receive a fixed stipend by which he may be compensated for the devotion of his time to public service, to be paid out of the national treasury.
Okay, so who is the what does that mean? Who's the executive top person here that sits for? So what does it say?
A national executive be instituted to consist of a single person, to be chosen by the national legislature for the term of 7 years.
A group of people who manage the political party, organization, in the whole country agree to the plan that they should follow. How about that? Term who serves a 7-year term.
I guess in a sense, you gotta realize this isn't when they have a
So
president.
I guess this would be the president. There it is. So a 7-year presidency.
It was an
was
idea.
What that idea consists of, because in 1787 here on the internet. So this was the original idea to have a 7-year president.
Thank God
until we had decided to just cut it to 4, and the president would have the option to be reelected to serve another 4 years.
But that was it.
So that's so you either serve one 7-year term and never be able to be president again, or you serve a 4-year term and then can be elected into another term
And have one extra free year.
to have power.
Interesting.
So that is pretty interesting. I wonder why and how they came to the decision to have a presidency of only 4 years at a time.
Because they don't, probably for the fact of they didn't want it to last. If the president that ran the country messed up too badly, at least in 4 years, the other sitting president could fix it, or hence the damage, and then get reelected to fix it again. Or, it's just for...
Or to keep a good thing going for another 4 years.
Yeah. It's just, it's just a way to fix or adapt America, because people have different ideas and different diversities. So the Founding Fathers saw a way to make sure that everybody has an equal way of becoming the president and use their ideas. And not over-search their power, but, mold America how they want it. How the people want it. Because you gotta realize different times, different kinds of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what they were accounting for.
And our forefathers really wanted to give a very big voice to, the people, the common folks, you know, because, you have to keep in mind that all of our forefathers and all of the foremothers that we had that came to this country before we became a nation on our own, we were all under a kingship. And under a kingship, yeah, we see in all the movies and stuff that the peasants will go and visit the king or the queen, whoever it is at the time.
By the end of the day, it's a
be
king's
like,
decision.
I need this and I need that. My people need this and my people in the village need that. And the king can have the decision of, okay, or yeah, nah, brah, just don't feel it.
Or just be like, you're gonna have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but you're not getting the full thing.
Whereas with a presidency, it kind of like, pushes the president to give the people exactly what they want, because if he would like to remain in power and get reelected, then he has to be bending to the will of the people rather than the people bending to the will of the king.
He has to be a servant to the public.
Yes, rather than the king, the public serving the king.
Mm-hmm.
It's the opposite way around over here in the United States, which is a very beautiful thing in honesty.
Yes. Now, resolve number 10. Resolved that the national executive shall have a right to negative any legislative act which shall not be afterwards passed unless by 2/3 parts of each branch of the national legislature. So,
so that's kind of like the rules of, that's kind of like taking the rules of Atlantis with the 10 kings. How, 9 out of the 10 had to be in agreement for anything to be passed. Going back to our Secret Destiny of America there.
yes. And that they can veto any act of law, and nothing can't be passed unless it has a 2/3 vote. Okay. Now resolve number 11. That a national judiciary be established to consist of one supreme tribunal. Tribunal. The judges of which to be appointed by the second branch of the national legislature to hold their offices during good behavior, to receive punctual at stated times a fixed compensation for their service, in which no increase or diminution shall be made so as to affect the persons actually in office at the time of such increase or diminution.
So diminution, all that it means is like to diminish, to reduce, to decrease, the act of decrease, stuff like that. That's what it means.
Mm-hmm.
We had to look it up because we didn't know what that meant.
Right.
Like, I had an idea with the, dimini, because I was like, oh, that's like half of, the word diminish. I wonder if it means to diminish something, to undermine. And, well, yes, that's exactly what it means.
Number 12. Resolve that the national legislature be empowered to appoint inferior tribunals.
So, okay, let's see what
the Virginia Plan resolve number 12 means.
Mm-hmm.
To put it in short terms.
What does
resolve number 12
resolve
12 in the Virginia Plan mean
in oops, can't spell Virginia.
I see. Today, Junior.
Today, Junior. Providing for the continued functioning of Congress. The 11th resolve. I said the 12th, not the 11th. Okay, so can anybody in the comment section answer me this? Why do I type in specifically I'm looking for the 12th resolve and it gives me all the freaking Google things for the 11th? See? Oh, the 12th called for the... Oh. See, the 11th one, I just read the top part and I got mad. Because this is not the first time that I've typed something in with the internet and it didn't give me what I wanted at first. So, yeah, the 12th called for providing for the continued functioning of Congress until the articles could be revised. Okay. But that kind of doesn't answer my question, though. What is a tribunal? Like, what does it mean?
What does tribunal mean?
Mean about the tribunal.
Unals. It's plural.
Okay. A tribunal generally is any person...
No. Hey, I said I'll answer for you.
Seems like you're referring to a specific resolution or provision related to tribunals, but Resolve 12 isn't a standard term widely used in the context of tribunals. Yeah, no... No crap. They are quasi-judicial bodies established to handle specific types or disputes, such as administrative tax, environmental issues, or they aim to reduce the burden on traditional courts. Okay. So, I guess that's where they, like, I don't know, make the decision on the budget and something?
There's a full definition, like, down below of tribunal. They give you a better idea. I guess, yeah, that one.
Tribunal is any person or institution with authority to judge, adjudicate on, or determine claims or disputes, whether or not is called a tribunal in this title, for example.
Okay.
And I don't want to,
go any further than that.
Tribunals are quasi-judicial duties created by the 42nd Amendment Act, which included Articles 323A, administrative tribunals, and 323B, which is tribunals of other matters. Okay.
Alright.
So I guess that's like a trial or something? I don't know.
Executive Supreme Judges, probably.
Probably like the Supreme Court, maybe?
Yeah.
The beginnings of the Supreme Court?
Mm-hmm. Resolved that number 13. Resolved that the jurisdiction of the national judiciary shall extend to cases which respect the collection of the national revenue, impeachments, or any national officers, and questions which involve the national peace and harmony. That was it. I'm going to reread that one. Resolve number 13, that the jurisdiction of the national judiciary shall extend to cases which respect the collection of the national revenue, impeachments, or of any national officers, and questions which involve the national peace and harmony. Okay.
So what did you get from that one there?
Basically saying that the judicial branch has the right to extend any cases to go further deep into how corrupt it is and if it has disrupted the national peace and harmony.
Okay. Pretty good explanation there.
Is what I got from that.
How many more do we have?
Just 5 more.
Just 5 more.
Just 5 more. Resolve number 14. Resolve that provisions ought to be made for the emissions of states lawfully arising within the limits of the United States, whether from a voluntary junction of government and territory or otherwise, with the consent of a number of voices in the national legislature, less than the whole.
So I guess that's where we need to have an agreeable amount of resources to have set aside for the states that need it. Mm-hmm. Is what I got from that?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, resolve number 15. Resolve that provisions ought to be made for the continuance of Congress and their authorities until given a day after the forum of the Articles of Union shall be adapted, and for the completion of all their engagements.
Wait, what?
Number 15. Resolve that provisions ought to be made for the continuance of Congress and their authorities until a given day after the reform of the Articles of Union shall be adapted, and for the completion of all their engagements.
So to kind of put that one in layman speak, how would you explain that one? Because it's like, okay, provisions, that means like, set aside resource, but it could also mean something else.
Probably, if I had to guess, reserves, emergency reserves, or and their authorities until a given a day after the reform of the Articles of Union shall be adapted. And for the completion of all their engagements. I don't know what really number 15's.
Well,
clearly it didn't get approved. Unless it did.
Resolve
15
of the
Virginia Plan.
Explanation. Well, would I have authority up to a specific day to complete all necessary duties before the new government system took effect.
Ah, okay. So basically...
Okay, so basically, like, we're going to give you a provision of time to be able to do all the things that you need to do before the new government comes in.
Like the new cabinet, like the new president. Like for example,
tying up all the loose ends from the previous...
Like Joe Biden's administration. Like Joe Biden administration, they got a certain amount of time until probably like January 6th or January 20th.
It's like January 21st or something like that, where they like peacefully switch hands.
Yes. So that's where that comes in. That's okay. That's where that comes into effect.
So then I guess November 5th, when the new president is elected, they don't really move into the White House until after
the 4-year terms.
The true 4-year term is up.
Yes.
Which it's up after X amount of time after the election. So that way it gives everybody a little bit of time, the previous president's cabinet and the president, to be able to tie up all the loose ends that they need to before they leave office and don't leave such a big mess or hassle for the next guy.
And has time for, if they call false election or anything else, there's time to look into all of that and get other laws or anything passed by the last administration wanted to pass. And so okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so our provision in this is our provision of time.
Yes.
Pretty much, they're given a set time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Resolve number 16. We resolve that a Republican Constitution and its existing laws ought to be guaranteed to each state by the United States.
Well,
that's a given.
That's easy enough.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gets the same right, guaranteed by
unanimous rights.
Unanimous right, yeah.
Number 17. Resolve that provisions ought to be made for the amendment of the Articles of Union whensoever it shall seem necessary.
So again, our provision here is time, giving time
for
to
an amendment
to be able to review an amendment and either say yay or nay on it, or to remove an amendment and have yays and nays on it as well.
Yep. Number 18. Resolve that the legislative, executive, and judiciary powers within the several states ought to be bound by oath to support the Articles of Union. Basically saying that they all need to take their oath that they will all be part of the United States and always tell the truth and the whole truth, nothing but the whole truth.
So help me God, as they say.
And then the last but not least, the final resolve, number 19. Resolve that the amendments which shall be offered to the Confederation by the Convention ought at a proper time or times after the appropriation of Congress to be submitted to an assembly or assemblies of representatives recommended by the several legislators to be expressly chosen by the people to consider and decide thereon. So basically reinstating that all the power still goes to the people, because people that they elect go in, and then they can elect whoever's in the state. Like in the Senate they elect, but
in the Senate and the House,
in the Senate and the House, and then the presidency. The only thing that the people don't really have a whole lot to say is the Supreme Justices.
Yeah, that's the president. The president gets to pick those.
Yes, but
But everybody else, our Congress, our House, our Senate, the president, we get to pick all that, just not the judges.
And that's it with the Virginia plan.
Well, that was very interesting. What resolve was the most interesting part to you?
I would probably say the 7 years presidency. Don't wonder how America would have looked after 7 years. If we had a 7 years president, and that was it. He was done. Like, you don't get a second term, none of that. You get 7 years and you're done.
Well, I mean, that was the part that I found to be the most interesting too, and something that we're gonna have to probably do a little research on. Or maybe whenever we get, into the later documents, it might answer that question for us later down the road. But I'm just as curious as you are, what if we actually decided to go with that and have 7-year presidencies? What would America have looked like with 7-year presidencies rather than 4 years at a time?
Because with the 4 years, with the first 4 years would be them making executive orders, and then watch the next 3 years see how they're, because they always say that, you know, you don't really see what the last president did until the next presidency into the economy. So with that kind of knowledge, 7 years, you know, 4 years for him to make the executive orders, then the next 3 years is them seeing the effects of the branch to see if it worked or not. And then the people can decide whether that was a good presidency or not, because they actually have all the info all at once.
Well, that's what they say, but
that,
I mean,
but that's
honestly,
what
with a Donald Trump presidency, we saw how, you know, we were basically like on the verge of a recession. He took us out of a recession, and that was within his first 4 years. And then when Biden came in, he had a very good economy that was a result of the last presidency, but also with his presidency and undoing those executive orders that Donald Trump put out. Just an example, like, we're not saying that we're Donald Trump supporters, we're just putting this as an example. And then when Biden undid all those executive orders, we kind of saw the pain, like, within 6 months of that. So I don't really believe the phrase that they give out, like what you said about how, we don't see the results until the next presidency. But if it's a phrase
that's been going on for the last 40 years, and, you know, that's how it looks and that's how it worked, I'm just saying that just throws that whole argument out the window. Whether or not you say it doesn't or not, it's just a simple sign of that. Like, seriously. Because you go in today's politics, they're gonna talk crap about each other all day long. So with the 7 year stuff, it kind of throws all that long transparency. Oh, you have my economy when you're president out the window. That's what I'm putting out. It nullifies that whole argument right then and there.
Well, I guess so, but I mean, I think, you know, with the last presidency that we had, we saw a very big difference, and we saw that man could actually, like, prove that statement wrong. I mean, yeah, that's the way it's been for the last 40 years. I mean, but look at all the presidents that we've had the last 40 years. We've never really had a president that was like Donald Trump, where, like, pretty much within the first couple of months of him being in office, we saw big differences that, you know, all the other Democratic and Republican presidents of before had, you know, promised, and we never saw the results of, because the next president would undo what they did, so we never saw the results. So, and if we did, it was very little. But with Donald Trump, we did see, you know, within months, change in the same presidency.
But anyways, the next document is the Northwest Ordinance, and this is how we got the states of Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Yep.
That's going to be an interesting read, and I'll be reading that one next week.
Yep. And with that, that's time, and that's the end of the episode.
And now for the next episode's announcement, we're going to try and do our very first live stream, y'all. So Thursday's episode is going to be really special because we're going to go live, or at least try to. We're going to try and figure it out. And it will be on the topic of UFOs. Woo! And play the X-Files theme. But anyway, with that, the episode has come to a close. If you like this episode, please leave a like, leave a comment. What was the part that you found to be the most interesting? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you have any questions for your host, or you just want to give a little shout out of, woo woo, congratulations, we'd love to see that too. With that, we're going to leave you with our famous slogan, to live life with eyes wide open, y'all. And we'll see y'all on the next one. If we don't get abducted first.